Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. Thank you so much for joining us on this wonderful Wednesday evening, or it could be well into Thursday, depending on where you're joining us in the world. I really appreciate you making My EdTech Life a part of your day, a part of your listening pleasure. And we want to thank all our audience members. I really appreciate all the new fans, all the likes, shares, and follows. Thank you so much for following us on all your podcast players. Please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like, a share, and a follow. And then that way, all the wonderful algorithms will share all of that out to all your amazing friends and just keep us in your feed. So thank you so much. And I am definitely excited about today's show. We have an amazing guest who has such an amazing story. And I had the honor and the pleasure of meeting him in person during ISTE, and it was just an amazing experience. And I want to welcome to the show today Dieumerci Cristel, who is joining us all the way from Tampa, Florida. Uh, I'm going to call you Diem. All right, is that cool?
Yeah,
All
yeah, that
right,
works
there you go. So
perfect.
Diem, how's it going, Diem? It's been a while since you and I have chatted.
I am doing so well. Thank you so much, Fonz, for having me here. It's honestly such a pleasure. From when we met in Philly till now, it's been just honestly an amazing experience. So thank you for not just being an amazing host, but also being just an amazing human being and educator.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, DM. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I definitely want to give our mutual friend, Jacqueline Gochoco, an amazing thank you. And we definitely want to give Class Hero a thank you also as well. And Rita Ferrandino, who hopefully will be joining us too on LinkedIn and checking out the episode. Thank you so much. And to all the wonderful people that we got to network. And DM, honestly, I am just amazed because the fact that I got to meet you and hear your story. I have not heard a story like that before, but the fact that at your young age, 25 years old, you are a founder of this amazing app that I had the honor of viewing and just talking about it. And it just really blew my mind because I saw so much potential. And I recall that evening that you and we talked maybe for a good 3 hours. And then the next day we talked maybe for another 2.5. And it was just something that we were just going back and forth on. And just because it is something that is wonderful. So, DM, for all our audience members that are joining us, they're going to be catching this live or catching this on the replay. Can you give us a little brief introduction and give us a little bit about your context as a founder? Let's talk about that story.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to tell my story and the passion that I have for education. So my story really, really starts in a refugee camp in Tanzania. My both of my parents are Congolese, and so I was born basically in Tanzania as a child of no nation because Tanzania does wouldn't like see me as a Tanzanian essentially a Tanzanian citizen, or Congo really wouldn't see me as a citizen there because I wasn't born there. So I was just a UN kid, born in the middle of a jungle, and for a very long time for me living in refugee camps, obviously, it was one of those experiences where, when you're a kid, you kind of just are born where you are born. But very, very quickly, I started to see that where I was born, the resources that I was giving and the environment that I was living in did not have the adequate I would say resources to be able to help me find my passion and my purpose in this life. And also on top of that, being able to actually ignite the potential that I have. And so for me, living in those refugee camps really quickly, I started to notice, instead of like kind of boasting of like, how, just living in those refugee camps, I started to see other students or other kids who look like me who had amazing talents. There was artists, the entrepreneurs, the engineers, the geniuses in these refugee camps. And and that to me was kind of that first place where I saw that talent is evenly distributed everywhere in this on this earth. And it doesn't matter if you come from a refugee camp like I did, or you come from Tampa, Florida, like where I am right now. everybody has their unique talent, their unique gift that they can offer to the world to make the world a better place. And for me, seeing that, and then seeing the environment that I was living in, and how that environment did not give me the opportunity for me to not only find not just my passion, but really find the potential that I had within me, by not just my potential, but also the potential of other kids who were living in those kinds of environments, really got to me. And so I was thought like, oh my gosh, like, what if, I was living in a different space. And so when we watch movies, for example, we'd watch these American movies, or movies from the UK or Australia, or China, like, and you would be all these kids on computers and doing these amazing things. And in my brain, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go there. I can't wait to go there and see what they're doing in those, in those educational environments. Because I never thought that I would come here and I would see the kind of education that I was able to experience. And to kind of fast track a little bit, but my family came to the U.S. in 2010. That's after 13 years of living in refugee camps. So I came here when I was 13 years old. From being born in a refugee camp all the way to living in Colorado as my first year in the U.S. And the most surprising thing I think was the food. It was a little bland. It was a little bland. That was my biggest surprise there. Because again, you also see the food, on TV. You're like, wow, like that food looks so amazing. But really, for me, education was really, really important, because I always thought, as I come to the U.S., I always thought about the other kids that I left back in the refugee camp that look like me, that wouldn't have the chance and the opportunity to have, this opportunity of being in America. And obviously for me, being the from a refugee camp and coming to America was like this dream that I had for more than 13 years of my life. And so for me, for a long time, one of the things that after I came to the US, I always thought about, okay, like, how can I use this opportunity to now gain that educational experience that I thought I was going to go get. And so for my first year of school was seventh grade. And in seventh grade, I got really lucky actually right away. And that's kind of the thing for me, was like I got so lucky, and I had Mrs. Klemper as my teacher. Mrs. Klemper was my ELL teacher who was able to teach me English in 1 year. I got out of ELL literally going from zero English all the way to learning most of the English in a year. And that happened because Mrs. Klemper got to know who I was. She got to understand my interests, and she would just tap into a little interest that I had, and she was able to just explain something so quickly, and it made sense to me. And one thing that Mrs. Klemper was able to find out about me was like, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert. So I love talking a little bit in the class. And sometimes she would, like she would pull me away. It's like, hey, DM, look, like, go do this other thing, go do this presentation, because I know you really wanna exert your energy in the classroom. And so she gave me opportunities to be able to do that. But the biggest opportunity for me that Mrs. Klemper gave me in my first year in that seventh grade was that she saw that not only can I speak in the classroom, not only can I present pretty well, but one of my other teacher, Mrs. McGraw, got, teacher of the year. And then Mrs. Klemper comes to me and she says, hey, DM, look, if you, because look, I really wanted to get out of ELL. Like I was like, oh, like I want to learn really fast. And the reason why, by the way, that I wanted to get out of ELL so bad is because I thought all the innovative lessons, all the innovative things that I saw on TV were in the regular classes. And I was just being, kept in the ELL classes box, right? To where like, no, you can't access that until you learn English. So I was like, oh, I'm so eager to go access that. So I wanted to learn English really fast. It's just like, look, I see that you've been doing really, really well learning your English. So I'll give you a deal. She said, if you write a speech for Mrs. McGraw and you're able to go deliver the speech when she receives her Teacher of like the Year award, I will, I will take you out of ELL. That was the deal. And look, Fonz, that was, say less, say less. I went straight up at home, wrote my little speech about, Mrs. My girl and why she was such an amazing teacher. And, and this was the first time, by the way, I get my first McDonald's meal. Her husband picks me up again. It's like this relationship again, just showing up. Her husband picks me up. We go to McDonald's and they're like, "Oh, what kind of meal do you want to get?" I'm like, "I don't know. I've never been to McDonald's before." But her husband buys me my first ever kids meal. We drive down and it's like 200 people. And I'm in seventh grade, and I just not even a year into America, and she gave me the spotlight to sit on that podium and not just tell my story, but also celebrate my teacher. And she kept her end of the bargain. Once I went back to class the next day, she's like, "You did an amazing job. You did it. Next year, you won't be in ELL." And it was one of the happiest days that I had. And for me, having that experience of an educator who was able to get to know me and able to see that, wow, this student has potential to be able to sit in front of people and actually deliver something meaningful and tell their story, to me was one of the first basis where I started to see the educator who really cared about the students, and actually and how the caring of the students was able to accelerate my learning journey as an ELL student, where again, testament of learning that one, English from zero, to I'll say about 80% of it in 1 year. um and so for me, that experience, now going into the regular classes, I didn't have Mrs. Klemper anymore. And so I started to see just like how education to me started tank from seventh grade going down. And like the more that like the more that I went into the traditional
Yeah.
education, the more that I felt like my teachers really didn't know me. I was just kind of like a number. I started to feel like like I was just kind of back in the refugee camp, closed faces. I didn't really have the freedom to learn some of the things that I wanted to learn. Um, and then also at the same time with me being disengaged, I started to see and notice that it wasn't just me. It was my friends. My friend who was an amazing artist, but again, like always felt stupid, always felt dumb, and I'm like, dude, you're one of the best, you artists that I know in the school, but nobody again in their school actually understood who the student is. Till today, the student is working at TJ Maxx, and I'm like, what is education actually doing to help us? So I became the C student. I opted in, and I became the C student because it was the only thing that actually allowed me to pursue other things. So I started learning how to play guitar, how to DJ. I'm a videographer. I do photography. I do graphic design. All my branding for my company, I did it by myself, because in high school I was learning all these other skills. But every time we'd go to parent teacher conferences, and I would sit there, and the teachers, in front of my parents, and they're now telling my story, and also not just my story, but my potential and my future. I always felt like there was a disconnect there of like who I knew I was versus what the teacher was saying I was to my parents. And so for me, that disconnection really kept me, in a state where I wasn't really like honestly happy with my educational journey. And I was really honestly disappointed in how disengaged, not just how I was disengaged, but millions of other students were disengaged. And so in high school, when two of my friends dropped out, that was it. Like that was kind of like the nail in the like, hitting the,
Yeah.
the nail in the head, where I was like, you know what, someone needs to do something about this. So what I did was I went on Reddit. I was on Reddit, and I talked to honestly like almost 500 teachers through surveys. I would send a survey monkey in there, and I would be like, guys, like, what's going on? Really doing my research to really understand the education. And at this point, by the way, I didn't even know if I was gonna become an entrepreneur at all yet. So then I'll go talk to my counselor at the school again, talking about educators and how educators were able to, as you said, like a 25-year-old entrepreneur building something in education. For me, it's my teachers who are pushing me. When I went to talk to my counselor, my counselor was like, "Hey, I know someone in the community who you could go talk to, and they might give you an opportunity to be able to go on the stage and pitch your idea." And I'm like, really? Again, like Mrs. Klemper, who gave me that opportunity early, gave me that confidence to say, look, I can go on a stage and I can speak about my story or tell someone else's story. And so when he gave me that opportunity and he went to talk to someone in the community, they're like, okay, here's the official date. You might go and talk about your idea of making education better. So, really going down that rabbit hole, my senior year of high school, I wasn't doing really well in physics class, and Mrs. Strand, again bringing in all these amazing educators that were able to see my potential. But Mrs. Strand comes through, and she's like, I'll go talk to her. Like, look, there's this big project I had to do. Obviously, like especially in like senior year, there's always some project to do. So I'm like, look, I need help on this project. I don't really want to do it. Like I was kind of just procrastinating a lot on this. But I was like, oh look, but I have this like opportunity to like go and pitch. Like we had such good rapport together that I felt like, so easy for me to talk about other things and the dreams that I had with her. Again, that communication and that rapport was so important. And so I told her about this pitch that I was offered to go do. And then she goes, look, so I know you have to do this physics project. I know you maybe not going to be Einstein or something like that. So listen, if you go out there and you give this speech, I will replace your project grade to that speech. Again, say less, right? Say less. Like you couldn't have asked me to do anything better. So I was like, boom, I will go do that speech instead of do this physics project that I have to do. But again, she saw that potential in me and she was able to, really like find it, able to pluck it out. And also not only that, but she was able to give me opportunities outside of school based on the skills that she saw that I had, based on the dreams that I had. She was able to go beyond giving me a grade and replacing that project grade, the physics project grade, to me going out and giving a speech. And then, again, that spiraled going into in the universities with Scott Meyer and so many educators that were able to, really follow me on this journey to give me the opportunity to not only like tell my story, but continue seeing the little potential that I had and giving me opportunities to be able to showcase that. And that's what I want for every kid going through education. So for me, it's like, what if we could scale Mrs. Klemper? What if we could scale Mrs. Strand? What if we could scale Scott Meyer in every classroom where every student is going in there and they're feeling confident that the educator who's sitting in front of them actually cares about them. And and so when I started talking to educators, like, look, we care so much. But man, I have so many students in the classroom, and that's where I started to really find what the problem was. And yeah, and we can get into the problem a little bit too if you want. But yeah, but it was really honestly talking to educators and my experience with the best teachers and seeing, well, what if I could replicate Mrs. Klemper and the love that she had for her children and the passion that she had for her students? What if I could replicate Mrs. Strand, who was respected and because she knew how to build rapport so well? So how do we take that work that she does and then make it really easy for other educators to be able to do in the classroom?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes to
Yes.
everything. One thing that I love is just the story and just hearing it. And I hope that everybody, and I know that this is only kind of like the Cliff Notes version, because when you and I talked, you told me like the whole story. But what really resonates with me here is that out of all the teachers that you had going up in seventh grade to 12th grade, you've really only mentioned three that really made that impact, because those three were the ones, and I'm not saying that there couldn't have been more, but these three that you mentioned were the ones that you said took the time to get to know you, got took the time to know what your likes and dislikes were. They really just took the time to connect with you, and that made a difference. And oftentimes we say in education, we oftentimes don't remember what the teacher, like our favorite teachers, it's not necessarily what they taught us, but how they made us feel.
Mhm.
And that is so important. So I am with you 110% on this, because as we know, through the millions and millions of schools that are out here, I know that it's not easy right now. And I know that there's definitely a lot of negative press, as far as education is concerned. But we saw a huge contingency of teachers at ISTE that are out there and getting re-energized and trying to do their best to continue to, push forward and be those educators and learning engineers to
Mhm.
give students those possibilities to do what they want to do and to aspire to meet their dreams, just like you have. And one thing that I love that you did is that you saw what the problem was and you realized in yourself, it's like, okay, I'm disengaged. Why am I disengaged? I fell into that C student, like you said, because you were no longer with, I forgot her name, the teacher for your ELL teacher. What was her name?
Mrs. Clamper.
Miss Klemper. So
Mhm.
you went from Miss Klemper, now you went into the, I guess, general population or general ed. And now you saw that everything moved fast, the curriculum moves fast. And oftentimes, as best as the teachers are trying to do, it's like they're juggling a thousand plates at once and trying to do everything. But what I love is that you said, let me scale and see what we can do with these three teachers are doing, but do it in such a way that is easy for all teachers to be able to do, to make those connections. And then that's when we can talk more about Enlight and how that idea came to be. So tell me, I want to know if you can recall that moment in time where you said, this is it. Like that light bulb went off and you said, I'm going to create this app and this is the vision and this is my why.
You know, it was actually unexpected, I would say, because after Mrs. Strand was like, I'm gonna give you this opportunity to go out there and pitch and tell your story. I was able to get the opportunity from Greg Tavina, 1 million cups in Fargo. Shout out Fargo. But I spoke. I gave my 5 minute pitch, and it was so amazing that I got this standing ovation. I was like, wow, okay. And like it was honestly so mind blowing to me, because I never thought I would, like, be received, like my story would be received like that, of how I felt about the education system, and how, like, in my theories on how we could improve it. So for me, it was about two, I'll say, two grown men that came to me with tears in their eyes, telling about their stories, Fonz. And for me, that was like the moment where I was like, wow, not only I knew it's not, the data says it's not just me. I know I've seen my friends, go through this, and I'm seeing and I'm living it because I am a student. But this person is like 40 years old, like with kids, and he's crying, in front of me, because of the experience that he also had. And so, like he was telling me about his story, his personal story about how he felt about the education system, and how it wasn't able to see him for, not like, for all the amazing talents that he had to go figure it out later, after going to college for something he really didn't even like really like, and spending money, like, it was for me that, hearing other stories from other people at that pitch. And then after that, when I went to start talking to other educators, I had this teacher from Texas who said something that, like, clicked. And he said, you know I have, I have more than like 300 students in my class. And although I, work really hard to try to, build a rapport with my students, sometimes I just feel like a public speaker don't really know my audience. that was it. I was like, oh, so what do you want to know about your audience? What do you want to know? And and that's where it really kickstarted my conversation with educators. Again, going back to Reddit, and Reddit is a huge educator community. So I went back on Reddit and I started talking and having conversations in comment sections with educators, like, hey, what do you guys want to know about your students? And so throughout, after high school, what I started doing was I started building profiles essentially for teachers, like, basically pro bono. So, I it was four things that they really wanted to know early on, and this was like back in like 2017. They want to know their passions, their interests, their aspirations. They wanted to know like what needs the students had, especially, and how the students were feeling. So that social emotional learning part was really really important. And so I just started creating Google Forms, and I would send it to teachers, and then they would distribute it to their students, and then I would receive the survey answers, and then I would create, like, basically beautiful profiles for the teacher in a more kind of like nice looking way. Because one of the things that I always heard was like, look, I do the interest surveys at the first day of school, and then I have my spreadsheet, and then like I don't like, I sometimes I don't have time to go into the spreadsheet and start looking at the answers. But also at the same time, sometimes I don't know what's in common, like what are the commonalities between my students, which was honestly one of the biggest opportunities that I started to see. I was like, well, if I know how to connect with DM, okay, how do I connect with this whole classroom community? What are the things that I can touch on, or, like at the top, where had the high access points that I can touch on that would touch, 20 other students that might be in this class, for me to be able to be, deliver an engaging learning experience for my students. Again, so for me, it was like working with teachers that early and creating profiles for them, just using Google Forms is how I got started. And then when I went to speak to the state, was like, look, we're gonna give you a little bit of money. And I was like, oh, well, there's some money in this. And so I was able to use that money to build my first version, or V1 of Enlight app, which really just a lot was building, helping teachers just build student profiles, to get to understand their students. And that was 2017, 2018.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is amazing. See, now going from that to what I saw you do, or your app, when you shared it with me and walking through, I mean, it just really blew my mind. And because I was honest with you and I told you, no, there's a lot of platforms that are out there, a lot of them are for instruction, but I have never seen an app like yours, with the dashboard, with the ability to get those student profiles. The fact that you're able to build those profiles and take them on from year to year and to year. And I talked to you some of the pain points that I had when I was in the classroom, and the way that we would group students, and in the way that that perceived notion of, no, we shouldn't do that, or we shouldn't put those kids here, or those kids belong in this group. But why? Is it just because it's your bias
Mhm.
that you have, and not necessarily based on what their talent is? Maybe it's just like, oh, well, they're a troublemaker and I don't want them here in my group them with somewhere else, and so on. But the fact that you have that growth from year to year, and next year's teacher can see what they did the year before, and so on. And not only that, but the way that we said, from, building the top down, from the bottom down, from the bottom up, to better the top down approach, for administrators and everything, to be able to see and know your campus. And that's what I loved about it the most, that it's not just a teacher knowing her students, but it's the whole campus knowing each other, because then now the principal can see what is happening, what is going on, what is that environment. And of course, you're making the best out of that information to create the best environment for student success. And it really just blew my mind. And the fact of how easy it really is. And that's
Mhm.
one of the things that I talked about with you. Said, a lot of teachers, time is of the essence. They got to be and meet through their curriculum. They got to do their lessons. They got to do everything. So something that's going to take up a lot of time, they're probably going to be like, oh, you're just adding more to my plate. But the fact that this weekly survey that is done takes no more than about 5 minutes at all, with you have 4 questions that you build upon. And not only that, but the teacher also gets a reflection piece so they can reflect on what either they may be doing that week. And it's kind of like a little PD, just in time PD, like I called it.
Mhm.
I absolutely love that and that vision that you have there. And so I'm really excited because of what this can do for education and really making those connections, because we talk about it a lot. And I think that's one of the pet peeves that I kind of talk to you about, is that we talk a lot about student voice and choice and student voice and choice. Well, are we really giving them student voice and choice when it's the teacher that is the sage on the stage, and not the learning engineer per se, that is really just engineering the learning experience?
Mhm.
But that's where we lose those connections. So if you'd like, DM, go ahead and if you want to set up your screen share, so you can go ahead and do that and maybe talk us through some of your main points in that vision that you had. I know I kind of might have jumped the gun a bit, but I know that you can probably explain it a lot better, because I get really excited about your app.
I appreciate it. And we'll definitely get into that, because one thing that I did want to add into that, especially like working on this. This is our third iteration of this product, and I'm honestly really really proud to have worked with more than 400 teachers and students on this. So this is teacher informed. Like, I have been very very diligent to make sure that I'm communicating with educators, communicating with students, communicating with administrators, to really build something that is beyond like what we traditionally seen at tech, to be honest. And for me, really it started like with especially with talking to those educators. I learned about two things. One is we got really good at building student profiles, but I learned really quickly that, like, and this is kind of my theory here, is that education has not evolved because it doesn't know its audience. It doesn't know who it's catering to. And you look at companies like Google, like TikTok, like Instagram, the reason why they create so many amazing experiences that are keeping us scrolling all day is because they get to know us. And for me, I always thought, like, what if a teacher knew their students as much as Instagram does? What if a teacher knew their classroom community as much as, like Google does, right? To me, it's that piece of understanding these students, who they are, their interests, because that's the same data that these most social media companies are honestly using to be able to engage the youth on these platforms. And so for us taking that data, by understanding that, I had to go in and really work with teachers to understand, okay, what kind of data do you want to know? And so from us serving these more than 400 teachers, more than 400 teachers and students, we learned four main themes is what teachers wanted to continuously learn. Because when we were building profiles, by the way, and this is kind of why this continuous data is so important, two problems came up. One was a teacher comes to me and they're like, "Look, DM, I I had gone and read a student profile, and I found out this kid was really into Fortnite. So I really wanted to go. I was so excited because my son also started playing Fortnite. So I was like, gonna go talk to him about Fortnite. And then the kid's like that's like so so last month." That's like so last month. And so it's like, being able to continuously learn about students who are living in such a dynamic world that is constantly changing. I mean, last year we were, going crazy about the metaverse and, like crypto. And then now this year, everybody's going crazy about AI. Like, it's changing so fast. And so, so are the students really on a day to day basis. And so we learned that teachers getting that data is so important, and making that data actionable is even better, even more important. And then also on top of that, going a little bit deeper, um teachers usually don't receive data. So I always remembered it was like the last day of school when we'd get, like, we'd take the how was school this year experience survey, and I'm like, well, if y'all getting this data now, you can't really improve on anything. And so the other big complaint that I saw from, that I heard from educators was that we're not getting just in time data about what's going on and the experiences that my students are having in the classroom. But also at the same time, I'm not getting, like, if the teachers, if the school did collect the information, I'm not getting it till next semester when we come back for the summer. And so it's like, well, the students that I had, now I'm like kind of sitting there wishy washy, like, oh, I wish I did this. I wish I did this. If I knew this ahead of time, I could have done this or I could have done that. And so for me, really learning four pillars that educators wanted to learn about their students continuously, and actually getting that data in time for it to make a difference was so important. And so we had to literally design something brand new, that, like, that I'm honestly really, really proud of. But essentially, the app is able to allow educators to learn four main things about their students in these categories. They're learning it continuously, going from super shallow questions to very deep questions. One is, who are my students? Two is, are they mentally ready to learn? Three is, how can I improve their experience? And four is, how can I improve my craft as an educator? Those four big themes are the themes that we learn that educators want to continuously learn to be able to improve their, not just the education experience for their students, but also themselves as professionals who go into teaching wanting to make an impact on their students. And so we took those four main themes and we broke them down into, okay, on the first day of school or on the first week of school, how can we take 5 minutes of the school community for students to answer interesting, fun questions about themselves, which, by the way, we talk to students too. And guess what? Students would tell us about, the tools that they're also using, because there are some tools that they're using, especially for social emotional learning and funds. It's like, how do you feel? 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 Every day, it's the same questions over and over and over again. And you end up with these what we call emotional heat maps that tell you, that, again, going from teacher feedback, or a teacher is like, well, I might see that my students are getting sadder and sadder and sadder every week, but I don't know what to do about it. I don't know what to do about it. And so that, again, that just in time PD, and also having proactive data, like, oh no, well, I know Fonz is having a really bad day today. Hey, Fonz, actually, going on to Enlight and saying, okay, it's Fonz's birthday next week, and talking to you about that. Or Fonz is really interested in X, and going in and talking about that and seeing how I can incorporate that in the classroom, or just making a quick comment in the classroom about that you only you might know. It's like, oh yeah, she read my profile. It's like having those access points, to be able to really not just like, the way I always call it is personalizing the love that you have for your students. How can you
Oh,
personalize that? Because when I was sitting in the classroom and you say, as an educator, you're like, I care about you guys. I look around, it's like 30 of us. Like, why do you care about me? Like, it's about me. For me as a student, why do you care about me specifically? And so how can you personalize that love that you have for your students, and not just project it to the 5 students that are in the front of your classroom, but also allow the students who are in the back, who sometimes don't even talk, to be able to allow themselves to be able to express themselves, and for you to get to know them. I'll tell another story, and then we can go into the demo a little bit, and I'll show just a little bit of the student profiles and stuff. But There was a teacher that was working in Arizona, and this was our in our second iteration of our product. She called me one day after she was using our product. She distributed the app like, "Hey guys, like please use it. Please, please build your profiles." She apparently had this student in her class that just never talked fonts, never said anything. She was always in the back doodling, and she's like dismissing her, like whatever. She's, that one student, I guess, that just will not engage. And so Enlight app comes into the classroom. Every student's like building their profiles, and the kids are really excited to be able to not just express that. And for the students, by the way, just building a profile with questions about you and your interests and things like it just got them so excited. But not just that, but also it saw like, wow, this teacher actually cares about us enough to ask us these questions. Like for them, it was so exciting. But the student took her laptop, went to the teacher, and was like, Mrs. Aaron, they don't have tattoos as an interest on here. And by the way, I never thought like high school kids would be interested in tattoos, or like middle school kids, because that's what we usually target. And so we never put it as an interest, as an option for an interest. So the teacher calls me like, "Hey, DM, look, you gotta add tattoos in here. We didn't have custom interests and things like that, so kids couldn't put in their own interests." But like the teacher calling me and telling me like, "Hey, you should add tattoos." As so I was like, "Look, what's going on with this tattoo story thing?" Turns out, which by the way, encouraging the teacher like, "Hey, you should go talk to the student a little bit more, why she cares so much about us adding this tattoo. We want to know the story." So she goes, talks to the student, and what she finds out is the whole time that the student is sitting in the back doodling stuff, and the teacher's like, "Oh, it's not just not engaged, doesn't care." The student is an amazing tattoo artist, amazing. So she brings her notebook of like, "Oh, here's all the tattoo drawings." Again, this student doesn't used to not even talk to this teacher. They didn't really have a really good rapport, and just having that tattoo, and the teacher asking more about that interest that the kid had, the kid bringing the notebook and showing the teacher all the tattoos that she's been drawing, and like inside and outside of school apparently at this time, really brought these two, the teacher and the student, together. And also at the same time, the teacher had always wanted to get a tattoo since she was 17, and that was like an even bigger spark, which was like, "Oh, hey, I've always wanted a tattoo since I was 17, and you were a tattoo artist." So we had, again, like it's like these steps, man. Like we had this teacher get a butterfly tattoo from her student, from just, again, figuring out that this kid has an amazing talent. And so you think about that student, and like, and the bond and rapport that that student built with that teacher. For the rest of the year, respect was there. The kid was starting to actually engage in the classroom just by figuring out that little thing. That kid passed that class that year, and that teacher got a forever tattoo, of her, from her student, and that student will never forget that teacher ever. And then all because she was able to gain one little access point to just know that this kid is interested in tattoos.
That is amazing, and this is what I loved about your app and the work that you're doing and taking those things into consideration, and the fact that you, like you mentioned earlier, the Fortnite piece, "Oh, that was so last week," or "That was so last month.
Mhm,
Now this
mhm.
is my interest." And the fact that that profile changes continually, and I mentioned to you my story, the way that I would, get to know my students. That whole first week, I wouldn't even teach. Everything was just about community building and getting to know my students, but I got to know them for that first week. But as the year went on, obviously things change, their likes and dislikes change and so on.
Yeah.
So then it got me thinking. I was like, man, the way that you have set this up, it is a win-win situation for the student and the teacher. Number one, for the student, because they are allowed to take ownership within their I guess the way they feel, in that social emotional connection, in that community building. They actually have a voice, and a choice of what they want to share. And the teacher gets all that information and is able to make those adjustments in their teaching for that week, because maybe, the student's struggling that week, something's going on at home. Maybe there was a situation, obviously there's a lot of things that may happen, like death in the family, things that happen, but now the teacher is informed and they're able to adapt to meet the students' needs and actually really meet them where they're at, rather than just passing them over and just continuing where the student just kind of gets lost within, the whole system and gets lost within the class,
Yeah.
and disengaged. But now it gives them that tool. And then, of course, that reflective piece. One more thing I wanted to add that I love about your app is that you mentioned, and many districts use certain, programs, that they do, but those programs are all teacher centered. It's the teacher that is leading
Mm,
everything. And like you said, it's like, well, how are you feeling today? Well, why are you feeling this way? And okay, well, now I just did my compliance, did my check mark. I'm going to go ahead and now just continue with my lesson and really not give enough time for students to have that discussion, have that discourse, and really be able to open up and share and hear. It's streamlined in a way that makes things, like I said, easy for the student, easy for the teacher, but not only that, but at the administrative level too as well. The administrators are able to see the climate of not just one classroom, but of the whole school, and find those trends, like what is happening, what do we, and then adapt to provide those supports that may be needed in those just in time moments too as well. So that's something that I absolutely love. So kudos to you, my friend. I'm really excited. So are you going to share a little bit about of your app here on your screen?
Yeah, I can go through a little bit actually. This would be actually probably first time ever that we're showcasing this, because we're going to be launching this fall, so I'm really excited. Here, let me see, share screen. I'll share my full screen for now, and let me know if you can see this.
There we go. We're all set.
Awesome. So this would be your typical class. Like, you'd have, about, so this class, for example, has about 41 students. And you could see actually right away, you start seeing these little, like, crowns here. So it's Bianca's birthday today. It's also Matthew's birthday today. And so again, it's like those little reminders as we just start to scroll through here of like the different students and the different personalities that are in, that Mrs. Williams has in her class. And so we can look at one of the profiles. For example, we'll look at Bianca. Bianca's, hobbies, and this is how the profile looks. Again, very, very clean, very amazing. We get your first name, the student's last name, their birth date, which obviously that was this week's birthday, which was July 10th. You get the nickname of the student, you get the hobbies, the three top hobbies of the students, the three top interests. They also get an academic goal, and this was something that we learned when we were working with educators. They wanted to also understand how confident their students were in their class. And so one of the questions that we ask when the students are enrolling in a class on Enlight app is, based on what you know about this class, what grade do you think you're going to get? And that that question really, really allows the educator to see, like, okay, this kid is a little confident in my class, really hoping for that B plus. And then what you get is the weekly insight. So for example, last week, and this is one of the things that we from feedback from students, they really wanted to make the questions relevant to what's going on, like around around the time, like, of when they're taking that survey. So last week, so these are questions from last week. So for example, we asked about their favorite ways to celebrate Independence Day. And then since it was Independence Day, and LADAP is able to use that Independence Day's, like context to ask kids different things about themselves, about their sense of independence and personal growth this school year. So you can see here the student in this class, felt like they had a low sense of independence and growth. As you can see here, again, like that's something that the educator can go and have a conversation with the student. And you could see here also, like we ask, what aspect of personal growth have you focused on most this year? So that social connections and relationship building is what the student really is focused on. And so we ask 3 multiple choice questions weekly. One is a community question that allows the students to also learn about each other and their community. And then we ask the open-ended questions, which you can come in here and actually see Bianca's, other questions. So how can we support your growth and independence this year? And here you get a treasure trove of answers. For example, what 3 words describe you best? Bianca thinks she's an activist, she's an artist, she's a strong leader, she's creative. It's these kinds of like questions and answers that really allows the educator to get to know that student a little bit more in the classroom. And obviously, since the teacher has a lot of students in the classroom, one thing that we're able to do here, as my internet is a little bit slow to load, we're able to build what we call class profiles. And the class profiles really allow educators to start to understand what are the trending hobbies in my class, what are the trending interests in my class. And these, again, just allow you to get those access points. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to reward my students this year in this class, movie, like putting on a movie might be the best way to do it. Or what's up, like with and then you also get to know exactly which students are actually interested in this, and you can start going deeper into that. Every week we spotlight different students, and then you get your weekly insights also to, again, continuously learn about these students. And the profiles are all dynamic, and so you could see here every week we're spotlighting different students, so you're continuously learning about them. And the really, really cool thing is, since it was the Independence Day and the students were able to take the survey, you get something we call a spark. A spark is essentially a data story. Think about it like a Spotify rap story for educators, that they're receiving and learning something new about their students every week. So you're able to just quickly come in here, and we tell you as an educator, the first thing we give you is context. What are you going to be learning about? And what kind of action why is this important? And what kind of action can you use, can you take based on what you're about to go learn about your students? So this is a very, very quick PD, that, this is like our first kind of like PD that the teachers get. And it really just starts to allow the educator to understand the context of the data, and what kind of action they can take based on the data. And so, as you go in, you can start going and learning what the students answered, and you can go and see that here. The other question, the 4th question, is the open-ended question that you're able to come in here, and then you're able to come in and read what the students said really, really quickly. And then on top of that, I do want to show a little bit of the student app. When they log in, obviously they have their surveys, and this is how the student surveys look like. Again, we made it really, really easy for the students to be able to take their surveys. For this week, how engaged do you feel during your classes on a typical day? So we're doing like something of, about engagement. What classroom activities do you feel most engaged in? I like games, I like competitions, again, or teacher-led demonstrations. You can answer multiple choice, put multiple answers to be able to allow you to express yourself as a student. And then we ask the open-ended question. These 4 questions, again, very 4 quick questions, takes about 5 minutes for students to complete. And then, you could suggest something, what would it be? So for I would love to see more to play Kahoot, right? So again, getting that feedback from students about things that would actually make an engaging classroom for them. Once you're done, you're just literally submit it, and it goes out to your students. I mean, it goes out to your teacher. And the really cool thing is we also build teacher profiles. So since I'm Mrs. Chantel Williams' class, I can see the interests of her interests, and this allows again for the student to humanize the educator. Also talks about, you know, the reason why the teacher is also passionate about like going into teaching, gives a little bit about a bio about this teacher so the student can get to know this teacher a little bit more. And the really cool thing is after the student takes their survey. So the student will be the first to take it, take that survey for this week. But the cool thing is you get to see the community question or the first question of what how other students are answering in your class, and to be able to kind of learn about other students and how they're thinking about their school experience in school. And so, for example, to really even go deeper, even to get to learn even more about your students, we also have what we call like same thing as course profiles, but also for students. And these course profiles just allows the students to again like get to know their classrooms a little bit better. So you can see that the trending hobbies in this class is hip hop, art, and sneakerhead. Remember, the other class was about like watching movies and things like that. So
Mhm.
the approach that the teacher might have with this class might be a totally different than they would have. You know, fashion really came to the top, basketball and boxing, right? These are all access points that teachers can use, but also it's not just about the teacher, but it's also the student getting to know the community. So having this class profile as a student allows you to start figuring out different ways that you can connect with other students in your classroom. So if you love hip hop or if you're also a sneakerhead, you might, you know, find out who else is a sneakerhead in your class to be able to connect over that. So that's just a quick little demo of Enlight app, and I hope I'm really honestly happy to do more like more private demos and go even deeper into what this product can do because this is just an iceberg of it.
Exactly. No, and just please make sure in the show notes you will find DM's information where you can go ahead and contact him for any additional demos. But one thing that I did want to add was I know one of our in our conversations that evening there in Philly, we were talking about teacher PD and you were talking to me about it and where I was just talking about how time consuming it is and many times the teachers feel that it is irrelevant because it seems like a cookie cutter approach where they don't really take into account the makeup of their class. They don't take into account the demographics and socioeconomic factors and the everything factors. But with this, the fact that the teacher is able to get that insight from the students, and not only that, but you get that spark where the teacher gets that just little quick reflection piece, which is really a short little PD session for them to just really think about what it is that they're doing that week or what it is that they would need to do just to improve and just to continuously be better. The other thing that I loved was just the course profiles too, where my first block class, they could be made up of all just athletes, and then my second block class would be maybe more fine arts students and so on. So then that gives me information as to how I'm going to present the material. And coming in from my marketing background that I did for years, I always saw each student was my customer, and I had 27 or 32 customers that I had to sell the subject matter to. So the fact that I didn't have this tool back then and was still able to do that, if I had this tool now and I was back in the classroom, I would be set for the rest of the year, and it would just make things that much easier for me and really getting to know my students. And like you said, really making the learning personal and really making those connections. And like we talked about, making those connections from the bottom up to improve the top down. I'm a big proponent of the students being able to connect to teachers, teachers being able to connect with students through your app, but also that global holistic approach where now the principal is connected to the teachers who are connected to the students, and then they know pretty much as a whole what is trending in their school, and then they can go ahead and improve that based on the feedback that they're getting. So I see this as something that is huge, and that's why I got really excited because I have not seen anything like this in my years of just you know looking through apps and really being an early adopter of many things. This to me seems like something that's really going to be like it's really going to revolutionize education and really take it to that next level. So DM, I am so glad that I had the opportunity to meet you. I am so glad I had the opportunity to just at least give you my feedback also, and just to work alongside with you those days there in Philly. And I wish you the best, my friend. Thank you so much. But before we go, Dion, please share with our audience members. I know that I'm going to be putting the information in the show notes, but what would be the best way if we have an education leader, if we have maybe an administrator, or we have maybe just a somebody from the board of a school district or anything that would like to hear more about Enlight app, what would be the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Amazing. So you can go to enlightapp.co. It's our website, which by the way, we just hit about 1,000 teachers on our wait list. And so we have a massive wait list. You could go to enlightapp.co, and you're able on there. You could actually schedule a call with me right on the website. And it's going to be on that call to action button where it says seed in action. Just put time on my calendar, I'll be right there, and we can go through the whole full product. Like I said, I only showed just a little bit of it to give you just a little teaser, because there's so much more that goes into it. And so the best way is enlightapp.co, or you can reach out directly to me on LinkedIn at Dieumerci Christel, or on Twitter at Carpe Diem / at the end. But yeah, I'm really excited. One thing that I did want to just add really quickly is, like, I'm really excited about AI. And I think, like, especially when you brought up the PD part, like like our goal is that this tool is helping you understand your students. It's helping understand their interests, their needs, and these needs and interests are able to allow the educator, or it's able to allow our AI engines to, and especially, like, us working with amazing advisors like Jero Washington, and like Rita Ferrandino, like, it's so many amazing educational advisors, and using that to create amazing professional development materials for educators that allows them to continuously learn about their students. I also want to shout out Ian Bott, also, who has been an amazing advisor to on the team. But the goal is putting an AI engine on top of this platform. It's going to be taking it to the next level. So I'm really excited to explore that with educators this year.
Excellent, man. Well, I'm so excited, man, and I wish you continued success. But DM, before we go, this is the last segment of the show where I always end the show with the last three questions for our guests. And this segment is sponsored by Content Clips. Please make sure you visit contentclips.com. Check out my boy Dylan Schmidt. If you are a creator and you really need to put out some content and you have long form and you want to create it into some short form stuff, please make sure you visit contentclips.com and make sure you check out Dylan Schmidt and follow him, because again, you don't have to hassle with any software. You don't have to hassle with doing things on your own at all whatsoever. They get it done. They're professional and they will get you squared away. All right. So DM, let's go ahead and get started with the last three questions. This is my favorite segment. And I know I didn't prep you for this, but it's okay. We're going to kind of take it as it is. But I wanted to ask you right now, DM, in your current or in the current state of education,
Mm.
and we know that Superman, his weakness was kryptonite. So that was the weapon that was used against him and kind of made him weak. So in the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonites?
That's a really good question. I would say bureaucracy.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say bureaucracy is the edu kryptonite that just doesn't allow educators to be the superman and superwomen in their classrooms, and to also allow the students to emerge out of classrooms with becoming their own superwomen and supermans.
Excellent. Great answer, DM. I really appreciate it. That's really a unique answer. I haven't heard that one yet. Thank you so much for that one. All right. Question number two is, if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Mm. Um, It'd be a massive billboard that essentially would be it would essentially say that talent is distributed by opportunities not. So let's, and then it would have like kind of like a call to action at the bottom, say every kid's dream should be nurtured and you should be part of that nurturing of that dream. That would be my billboard.
Hey, there you go. Nobody said that it had to be a small billboard. It could be a billboard of any size. All right, great
Amazing.
answer there, DM. And the last question, DM, is let's go. This is kind of like a more chill, relaxed one. So I wanted to ask you if you can turn one of your favorite hobbies or activities into a full-time profession, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love cars, so I would love to be an F1 driver.
Ah,
But I just be on the highway.
all right, great answer. So we got F1 driver. That is the first two as well. Well, DM, I really appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time
Appreciate
out
you
of
as
your
well.
busy schedule to be here this evening and just to share your vision, share your vision with all of us, and definitely something that I am really excited about. I also want to give, like we did earlier in the show at the very beginning, give Jacqueline Gochoko a big shout out. I know she's joining us here. Jacqueline, thank you so much. Class hero as well. Thank you. Rita, we had Mike Tedeschi here also as well, who's giving you a shout out to as well. And all to all of you, all my friends, please make sure that you, if you're going to check out this episode on the replay, please make sure that you check it out. Make sure that you share it. DM is going to be doing some great things. You're definitely going to be hearing about Enlight app a lot more in this coming year after the fall. So you please make sure that you're watching out for them, probably at the next big conferences like TCA, FETC, ISTE, and all of that in this next coming year, because this is definitely going to be taking off. And, for you all, you heard it here first. I'm calling it out. He's definitely going to be doing some great things with this. So I'm really excited about that. And for all our audience members, as always, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for making this show what it is today. We do what we do because we have that passion and that drive to bring some amazing conversations your way, some amazing educators and creators your way, so that you can connect with them and learn from them. So please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 209 other wonderful episodes with amazing educators and creators that you can take some knowledge nuggets from and sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. If you want to go ahead and support our show too as well, please make sure you check out our merch store, where you can go ahead and get some fresh My EdTech Life gear, and all of that goes back into the show. And so we can continue to bring you some amazing guests and amazing conversations. So as always, guys, thank you so much. And my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.